when you're younger, generally your aim is to be happy, right? Have a good job and a family. That's the sort of general trend direction people want to go in. But later, when you have those things, or at least you're well on the way to gaining those things, what do you think your aim is? What do you think? Make a difference? Okay. When you're getting older, um, when you're on your deathbed, do you think, oh, I had a really good job, or I made loads of money? You don't think of those things, do you? You think a bit more deeply about things. Actually, in a way, as you get older, and I think I can talk from experience now, unfortunately, you become more serious about being a better person, right? And the most fundamental aspect of our nature is that we're trying to develop is heart, which leads to becoming a better person. As Jordan Peterson, some of you may know who he is, points out, he said, religion is about proper behavior. That's fundamentally what religion is about. And a genuinely religious person is trying to be a good person. However, of course, it may be the case to that person that good means nothing but obedient. And the classic Western Enlightenment objection to religious belief is that, obedience isn't enough. We need to be more than just obedient. Something needs to come from our soul, our hearts. And it's a start, though, to be obedient. Because if you're undisciplined and you're ignorant, you can't work towards higher goals, right? So in a way, you have to be obedient to certain laws and rules. You need a framework. Everyone needs a framework and an aim, something that we're trying to attain in the end. It's therefore necessary and desirable for religions to have a dogmatic element. So what does dogmatic mean? Anyone know? Nigel, do you know? Doesn't know quite. Yeah. Yeah, okay. In the dictionary, it says dogmatic is to be inclined to lay down principles as undeniably true. So for example, living for a higher purpose is good. That's a dogma. We feel it's true, right? Making time offerings is good. That's a dogma, but we think that's true. There are 3 stages of growth. That's another dogma. We think it's true. The spirit world exists, so we need to grow spiritually. That's a dogma, right? But we believe it. Just because we call it dogma doesn't mean it's not true either. So we need a value system that has a stable structure and that points the way to a higher order, basically. And religion provides that framework or kind of scaffolding to hold up the edifice of your spiritual growth. That should be the purpose of religion. And on that journey to growth, there are many opportunities and also challenges to learn, to develop. But if we don't take those challenges, we can be pushed into a corner until we do. That's actually a dogma also, yeah, but we believe it's true. And God continuously sets up circumstances for us to develop and take responsibility. The trouble is that we often sidestep those challenges. We get a challenge, and it's difficult to go through it. We're not willing to go all in and face that challenge, and we just sort of half-heartedly make a bit of an effort and then give up when things don't work, and then we get upset about the whole thing. Yeah, we feel resentful or hurt. And essentially, we need faith that God is in the backdrop to our life, and so that we can face up to whatever challenge that we have, right? If we feel that God is behind that, then we are more likely to want to go ahead and to face that challenge and overcome whatever it is, or develop in that direction that we need to go. And generally speaking, our path narrows down to a point, like a bottleneck or a funnel, which is the place that we need to learn to change something, which is what Father was talking about there, Father Moon. If you're relatively young compared to me, then you may not have realized this, but if you don't face those challenges that are in front of you, you will find yourself in a similar but more difficult circumstance sometime later. And I've experienced that. Actually, I'm experiencing it now. So I'm going to tell you where I am at the moment. You might be a bit surprised, but anyway, just bear with me. I'm actually okay after you hear all this. You know. So as you may know, I'm the chair of the board of trustees for our FFWPU charity. And in 2021, we started a process to update our charitable organization from being a trust, which usually looks after properties. And we set ourselves up as a trust to receive the farm that was donated to us by the masters. And we're changing that to what's called a charitable incorporated organization, or CIO, which is more active. It doesn't just look after properties, but that organization allows for activities, because we do a lot of activities now. Our structure doesn't really match what we do. And this new structure also protects trustees from personal liability. So it's easier for new people to come in and feel that they don't have a huge burden of legal responsibility on their shoulders, which the trustees at the moment do. So there's, it's also a charity that can act then as a single person. It's like a business. A business sort of acts as a person, and you can sign in the business's name. So that would be the same for us, which is very important, because when a trustee is changed, the name change doesn't have to be made in all our property and bank documents, because the properties and all that are all in the name of the CIO and not in the name of the trustees. Believe me, this will save a lot of time and money, because we have a couple of dozen bank accounts and about 40 properties. Every time a trustee changed, for example, when Joanna Hartle passed away, or before that, a year before that, Andy Johnson passed away, and so on, we had to change all these different details in our properties and banks and this and that. And it took a whole year or year and a half or even longer to do that. So it saves a lot of effort. And after a year and a half, we've almost come to the end of making that change to a CIO, and just needed to go ahead with we needed a go-ahead from the Charity Commission. And then at that point, quite a lot of opposition started to come to us from Japan. Not our movement generally, right, in Japan. And we were kind of concerned about that, because it might affect something here. Anyway, on October the 8th, 2022, I had a dream. And I was in a small executive jet with Mike Balcom. Yes, we don't actually have one, right? Just to make sure. And someone fired a missile at the plane. It was closing fast, and we were desperately trying to evade it. We flew down as low as we could to try and avoid it. And we were making for a large country house that had a big field where we could land. And in order to land, we were very heavy. The plane was heavy, and we had to throw out something that I was very attached to. And we just managed to heave this thing out of the plane, and then it was kind of okay to land. And we landed. So I was thinking about this dream afterwards, and thinking, what's that thing, with throughout the door? And I felt it was a bit like when Abraham offered his son Isaac. He had to make some big thing. And I had an idea of what it was that I was attached to and what the dream signified, but I didn't do anything about it. At that time, last October, my prayer life was at rock bottom, and I was feeling quite disconnected from church things and a little bit sort of cynical about things, to be honest. The first point of fallen nature? What was that? Yeah, well, I was there, right? Not seeing from God's point of view, not really clear about things. And on November the 2nd, just less than a month later, I became really ill with flu. And I was sick for about almost 2 months until Christmas. And I was really sick, actually. And after a month of feeling awful, on December the 3rd, I had another dream. And in the dream, I was sitting final exams at a university. And only the problem was that I didn't know any of the answers. And I didn't even have a piece of paper to write the answers down on. Anyway, the exam finished, and I didn't hand anything in. And my friends came up to me afterwards, and they were very disappointed in me. And, you know, because I'd so badly failed. And they were pitying me, you know, oh, really sorry. But they were pitying me, and I felt really wretched and so ashamed as I walked away from them that I woke up. And I lay in bed with this really miserable feeling that I had failed the test, yeah, and that I wasn't doing what I should do to overcome this attachment that I was trying to cut off from. And I couldn't bring myself to make any effort towards that. And I was so sick that I didn't want to make the effort anyway, to be honest. Yeah. So 3 days later, on December the 6th, I had an extraction of 2 molars here and here, which took 2 hours to do. The dentist was really struggling to take these molars out. And it took so long that she was afraid to give me any more painkiller. So actually the pain wore off. The pain grew more and more because the painkiller wore off. And I had to have stitches in afterwards without any painkiller, which was terrible. It was like, it's really bad. And anyway, I was really in pain. And that evening, the dentist rang me just to check that I was okay. I've never had that in my life, that a dentist rings me, you know. Anyway, I was kind of okay, but I was in pain for days, and I couldn't eat properly for 3 weeks, you know. And I was sitting there thinking about these things sometimes, you know, when I couldn't eat or when I was feeling all really miserable with myself. And actually, I still had this flu. And I realized that I was in a really serious situation. You know, I was really stuck somehow, and I had to make more effort. I was worried also that our CIO application might be affected by the issues in Japan. So on December the 11th, I started a 21-day prayer condition for the application. And I asked the other trustees if they could join in, which they agreed to. And I thought that if I started to pray seriously for that, at least I would be able to strengthen my will, my own will also. And it would help with the CIO application. Because if you can make some spiritual conditions, usually your heart kind of engages, and the relationship between your heart and intellect, if you read the principle, creates will, right? So I knew my will could increase and I could be able to do something about that. Then the next day, December the 12th, I had another dream. And in the dream, I was away from home and I was lost, completely lost. I had a map, but I couldn't work out which way up it had to go, where I had to go to get back home. And I was feeling really anxious. And I sat down on a chair to try and sort of calm down a bit. But the chair tipped over backwards. And I fell over and fell through the floor, which opened up into a vast chasm. It was, you know, miles deep and hundreds of yards across. And I was falling down this chasm. And down and down and down. And the entrance above, I was sort of falling on my back, going down. And the entrance above started to recede into the distance. It was so far away as I fell. And all around the sides of me, there were all these different layers of people doing things and things happening and activities and different countrysides and buildings and things just flashing past as I went down. And basically, it was like how I imagine the spirit world is, you know, made up of lots and lots of levels. And I was kind of falling through them all. Finally, I landed at the bottom. And, well, the bottom for me anyway. And it was a children's playground full of noisy children. And there was a woman nearby who should have been organizing them. And so I went up to her and I said, you know, I really want to go home. How can I go home? I got this map. How do I go home? And she looked at me and said, oh, I'm really tired. I'm sorry, I can't help you. And she just turned over and went to sleep. And I was left there feeling really lost and difficult and feeling this terrible feeling. And I woke up from the dream. And I had this strong feeling of dread, Yes, I don't know if you feel this dread feeling. Oh God, feeling. And I'd just gone to hell in my dream, basically, right? And I was lost, but not just in my dream, but in reality in my spiritual life. That's what I felt. And through that, I strengthened my will, my resolve to do better. So I prayed each day of this 21-day prayer condition. I came here to the prayer room every day to pray as much as I could. And I prayed in that prayer room, and it was actually very good. And I could start to connect with God again and feel more, start to be more clear in my mind, connect to the church more and feel more involved, generally speaking. And I finished the 21 days prayer on December the 31st, the end of the year. And in that time, I gradually gained more will to overcome my issues. And the next day, on the 1st of January, I started a 40-day separation prayer condition. I thought, okay, right, I'm going to do a 40 days separation prayer. And I finished that on 9th of January. And on the 17th of February, just not long ago, I started another 40 days condition, this time to directly confront this issue that I felt I had. And on the 22nd, last Wednesday, I had another dream. And in it, I was in university again. But this time, a very young teenager showed me up into the exam room. And I had to sit another exam. But actually, it was like a young person's exam. Like I was starting again from the beginning as a kind of young person. And this time, the lecturer came up to me, and he came right beside me and started to help me and guide me. And I was getting the answers right, basically, as I went through this exam paper with his help. And so I'm sort of beginning my education again on this point. That's kind of where I feel I am. So, bit of a long story, right? But sort of in and out of terrible situation. And I think as time goes by, as we get older, deeper issues that have become quite firmly entrenched in us, or deeper issues even from our past or our ancestry, they sort of rise to the surface for us to face when we're ready for them. And at least, we've got more practice through our life of overcoming these things. And, through simpler issues when we're younger, we can learn what the principle is, how we overcome these things, how we challenge ourselves, how we overcome our challenges, how we apply the principle, and so on, make conditions and all that. So that when complex things come or really deeper things come later, we're able to face those things and we're able to overcome them. Anyway, it's a bit of a long saga, but the point is that at first I didn't know something was wrong. I didn't know something was wrong. Something was wrong. I had no idea it was wrong until I had this first dream with the airplane. And then through a succession of dreams, I began to see what it was. I could start to understand what it was, but I didn't want to face it, And finally, after making serious prayer conditions, I gained the will to overcome it. And, I'm on that path now, right, to kind of go through that. So sometimes we're almost forced by circumstance to learn the lessons that we need to know. It's generally can be like that. And of course, we don't always change or learn. I didn't necessarily have to learn or change, but so I was able to do that. In which case, if we don't, then we'll find ourselves in a longer path to get to a similar point later, as I mentioned, right? So it's actually better and much less painful to be decisive, take the bull by the horns and go all in, right? You sense something's wrong, work really hard to try and find out what it is, and then go for it and change, It's less painful, believe me, it's less painful. And there's a quote from Master Yoda here, which is very useful for you. Hope we can see it. That, okay, right. So basically, if you didn't hear that, Master Yoda is saying, he's telling Luke Skywalker to do something. And Luke says, okay, I'll try. He says, no, do or do not. There is no try, right? Just do it, yeah? Don't try. Don't have this attitude, oh, I'll try. But you have to understand that God has actually brought you to that point so that you can change, yeah? It's tough, you're conflicted, you feel really miserable, you try and escape your circumstances and find happiness in anything but that thing that you have to face. Or you try to do anything except what you should do, or you try and escape your reality in some way or another. And St. Augustine wrote this in his Confessions. He was called by God, but he didn't want to follow. It's a very famous story. And he wrote in his Confessions, I carried inside me a cut and bleeding soul, and how could I get rid of it if I just didn't know? I sought every pleasure, the countryside, sports, fooling around, the peace of a garden, friends and good company, sex, reading. My soul floundered in the void and came back upon me. For where could my heart flee from my heart? Where could I escape from myself? You can't, right? So you have to face what you have to face. And of course, there can be many external reasons that bring you to your challenges. And you might want to blame them, right? It was him who said that to me, and that's why I feel so bad. Or it's that problem, or, it's her fault. Or I'm no good, I failed, I want to go away. I don't like this place. I don't like that person. I don't make a difference anyway. It's too hard, and so on and so on. We want to blame other things outside us, not to look at ourselves as a way to make change, right? But don't make that mistake. Our life is governed ultimately by spiritual laws, not by external circumstances. We really have to understand that. That's the religious path, to really understand that, actually. If you're really challenged, more likely or not, you're at some turning point where you have to make this effort and change. And you are the one who can turn defeat into victory, right? You're the one, nobody else. Then you can take this bottom place, this difficult place, this hell in the right way, and you can overcome something and grow. Sometimes it may not be so dramatic as the thing I went through, right, with teeth being pulled out and being ill for months and so on. It probably is sometimes not that difficult, but it's good to face it and go through it, whatever it is. And this is important. You will turn everything you did up to that point sour if you run away from it, or if you blame other people. It's very easy to do that, actually. And I see a lot of, church people, not just our church either, but they turn around and blame their church or those people or whatever, and they become resentful and hateful or something when something happens to them, that they don't turn into a way that they can grow and change themselves. And they blame somewhere else, and they're filled with resentment for all that brought them to that point. It's very easy to become like that. One of my good friends has become like that, unfortunately. So don't let that challenge turn you bitter and resentful. As M. Scott Peck wrote in his book, The Road Less Traveled, you might have read that yourselves, he said, problems do not go away. They must be worked through, or else they remain forever a barrier to the growth and development of the spirit. And an unknown author wrote, the road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. You get that one? In a way, you can tell that place is a place of challenge because it's the place of denial, right? It's somewhere you have to really overcome something, and where you have to deny all kinds of different things, especially yourself. And that's why many religions teach self-denial, because you need it to grow. You need to learn how to deal with that. But if you grasp that challenge and make it your own, you'll gain all that you thought you were about to lose. And this is also the amazing thing. In fact, a whole new world of possibilities will open up. And you'll find that what you thought was impossible or difficult or hateful isn't really that at all. It's a very strange experience if you've had it. And it was all inside you, right? So I had that experience also a long time ago with one auntie who I couldn't get on with and I hated. And after incredible struggle and effort, finally I made the determination to make an effort. And I made this effort, and within a week, I fell in love with her, basically. She was like my mum in the end. And I still feel like that towards her now. It was an amazing experience for from somebody I really disliked and criticized and felt resentful and hateful against, to somebody I felt was like my mum within a week. Because I made this huge effort to overcome something in myself. So you will find that's possible. What you think is something such a barrier actually isn't at all. You know, what bound you or caused you to become stuck or challenged blows away like sand in the wind. You know, it's like that. And you become a much freer person. Okay, thank you. So please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parent, it's difficult to say thank you for the experiences I had, but thank you that I could change and learn something and be on the road to a different level. Father, please be with my brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles here who are all going this way in one way or another. Please help them to find you in the challenges that they face and to be able to come to a point where they can really bring your spirit into their life and bring your will to bear. Father, we are so blessed in many ways that we have incredible tools to put in practice for our life. And we are very honored to be able to follow our true parents in this amazing time. Even the world at the moment is facing the same kind of thing, huge challenges which people need to face up to and bring righteousness and goodness into so that we can go on to a different level. Father, please guide us all, we pray, and offer this prayer in the name of Timothy Reed, Central Blessed Family, Arju.